Good evening, everyone. I'm Dawn Kleindorfer, and I'm the chair of the Department of Neurology here at the University of Michigan, and welcome to this inaugural ceremony. We're really excited that you're all here today. We're going to be celebrating the Andrea and Lawrence A. Wolfe Research Professorship and the installation of Dr. Melissa Elafros as its inaugural holder. I just wanted to say a brief word about professorships and why they're so important and critical to the medical school and especially to our department. Professorships are really critical to our institution, and they are a prestigious recognition for both the honoree and the recipient. They convey our commitment to scientific freedom and allow us to pursue new and innovative areas of significance and drive progress forward. Those who hold professorships infuse knowledge and expertise across their fields, impacting patients, trainees, and colleagues. The Andrea and Lawrence A. Wolfe Research Professorship was established in 2022 by a generous gift from Andrea and Lawrence A. Wolfe Foundation. It will support a faculty member in the Department of Neurology with a primary focus on brain health research in the Neuro Network for Emerging Therapies program. I'm happy that we have the opportunity to celebrate this wonderful professorship together, as well as the many accomplishments of our colleague. Before we hear more about Mr. and Mrs. Wolfe and Dr. Elafros, however, I would like to recognize some of the special guests joining us today. From Mr. and Mrs. Wolfe, we have their sister, Patty Aaron, and their special guests. Thank you so much for coming. And Dr. Elafros' family, we have her husband, Jackson, who is also a cardiologist at the University of Michigan here, as well as her 2-year-old son, Nate, who just had a birthday on Saturday. Parents, Dad Pete, in-laws Amy and Anju, and joining virtually, Mom Martha and Sister Allison. And we also have some family who flew in from Zambia, Gretchen Burbeck and Michelle Kvasland, as well as others joining virtually. Welcome to everyone who is with us today, as well as those joining virtually. It is my distinct pleasure today to acknowledge and honor two remarkable individuals, Andrea and Lawrence Wolfe, or Andy and Larry, who have established this professorship through their foundation. Their generous spirit and enduring dedication will provide lasting support for neuroscience research at the University of Michigan. We take immense pride in our alumni and our supporters, but Andy and Larry exemplify a level of engagement and philanthropy that truly sets a gold standard. Their contributions to our community go far and beyond the financial. They're architects of change and champions of innovation. Since graduating from the University of Michigan, the Wolfes have poured their energy and goodwill into supporting our institution. As loyal Wolverines, their impact across the campus is widely felt. Andy and Larry's involved presence has been nothing short of transformative, from participating in advisory boards to receiving the prestigious David B. Hermelin Award for fundraising volunteer leadership. Tonight, we gather to recognize their latest and most profound commitment, the establishment of a professorship that will advance our understanding of the brain and its capacity to thrive as we age. This professorship is driven by Andy and Larry's shared fascination with the complexities of the human brain and a deep respect for the potential of research. It focuses on brain health and healthy aging, and it is not just a gift to the University of Michigan, it's a show of support for the health and vitality of every person at every age. And now I'd like to ask Andy and Larry to join me at the podium so I can present them with a medallion. Medallion. Andy and Larry, on behalf of the Regents of the University of Michigan, I present this medallion to you in honor of your foresight, generosity, and belief in the power of discovery. We are grateful for your extraordinary support. Thank you, and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
You want to say a few remarks? Okay.
They gave me way too much time. So yes, I graduated from the University of Michigan. Larry married me. And he's probably more supportive I mean, he's been involved more than I have. But I think that what the Michigan medical system, medicine does is totally amazing. And when we talk about research because we believe that you have to support research. You don't always win, but if you don't try, you never win. So we believe in research. And then we believe in Eva. And Eva said, I want you to meet some people. And we met this adorable little girl who's having a baby.
I'm glad she said that, not me.
Melissa is like, she has drive. She has this amazing drive. And she just convinced me just by talking that this was a person I wanted to support. And Larry said, whatever you say, dear.
Right.
We both believe that the brain is the key to everything. I'm big on inflammation. The brain is all about inflammation. Melissa does research in Zambia and in Flint and underserved communities, and all of this she ties together, and she's going to make some huge strides, and I'm very proud that we can be a part of this. And we want to acknowledge that we actually had friends that came too today, Arthur and Trudy and Bruce and Susie. I know my sister might be here, but I don't see her. Patty, you're supposed to sit down here. Love you, sister. I have not a lot more to say. We will always support Michigan medicine. We think what goes on is life-changing. Oh, and David's here. And I'm going to see David for the weekend because the Con Symposium is this weekend. Yay! Okay, that's it for me. You're back, Dawn.
Thank you. That was lovely. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Eva Feldman, the James W. Albers Distinguished University Professor of Neurology and the Russell N. DeYoung Professor of Neurology. Dr. Feldman is also the director of the Neuro Network for Emerging Therapies and of the ALS Center of Excellence at Michigan Medicine. The Wolfes have been greatly inspired by Dr. Feldman's work as one of the world's leading authorities on neurodegenerative disease. And as a mentor to Dr. Elafros, she's joining us to celebrate this professorship and share a few words. Welcome, Dr. Feldman.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm really so thrilled you're all here. And thank you, Dawn, for that nice introduction. So, philanthropy and Larry and Andy Wolfe are becoming somewhat synonymous words here at Michigan Medicine. And I always think you can maybe say it's in Andy's DNA because, there is, of course, the D, Dan, and Betty Kahn Foundation that has been enormously supportive of Michigan under Larry's direction, Arthur's direction, and Patty's direction, who's joined us today, with Andy being the cheerleader in the background. We're sitting in the Kahn Auditorium, and if you go outside, you can look across and take a look at the new Kahn Health Pavilion. It was through another Kahn Foundation event that I first really got to know Andy and Larry. It was 2011. The Kahn Foundation supported the formation of what's known as the Michigan-Israel Partnership under David Pinsky's leadership. And then in 2012, they took 20 University of Michigan scientists and they brought us to Haifa. And it was really amazing. And day one, we're sitting in really a fantastic scientific symposium. And there's this woman in the front row, madly taking notes, asking these really great questions. So I turned over to David Pinsky and I said, did you hire a scientist I don't know about? Who is this person? Well, it was Andy. And that really is the beginning of, I would have to say, a couple of things. One, a fast friendship, and two, my understanding of what a remarkable, actually, scientist Andy is. So I came up to her at the reception that evening in Haifa, and I introduced myself, and we started to talk. And yes, as I said, we became fast friends. We share the same values. We love our family. We love University of Michigan. we love science and research, Judaism, and also, as an aside, face creams, which we, which we buy from Israel. So I have to tell you, to say that Andy has an interest in science or a passion is really an understatement. And we've had the pleasure for actually coming and visiting us in the lab. She has her own lab coat. We put her to work. We glove her up and we put her to work. And she actually has worked in the laboratory. And when she comes and visits us, it's infectious. Her enthusiasm and her love for science are truly infectious. Now, one of Andy and Larry's particular interests, as you heard, and mine, is on brain health. And with their support, we formed the Andy and Larry Wolfe Wellness Initiative for Brain Health and the Neural Network for Emerging Therapies. And in less than 2 years, because of their generous support, we've been able to publish over 20 papers that have helped us understand the following. And it's how what you put in your mouth, what you eat, what you're going to have at that reception actually affects the immune cells in the brain that help shape the neurons that allow you to think correctly. So it's fascinating, and we share that fascination. I will also have to tell you that while it's really clear that their friendship has impacted our research, what's really even more dear to me is this personal friendship that we've had over the years. Larry and Andy are my dear friends, and it's their passion, their caring, their generosity that knows no bounds, and brings us to today to celebrate Melissa, Dr. Melissa Elafros. So I first met Melissa in 2019. Dr. Brian Callahan, who I've had the pleasure of being a mentor to, introduced me to Melissa and said, we need to bring her here. And after 5 minutes, I thought, we really need to bring her here to the University of Michigan. And we were successful in doing that. She was our fellow, and then she came and joined our clinical group, which is shown in the upper right-hand corner. And then, of course, very fortunate to us at the Neural Network that she also joined our research group. And you see here a picture of Brian Callahan, who sends his regrets that he can't be here tonight, Melissa and myself from a couple weeks ago. So Brian, in the academic world, you have pedigrees. And so Brian is my academic son. So needless to say, Melissa is my academic granddaughter. Now, my academic granddaughter is a phenom, okay? She is doing this amazing research in Flint, Michigan, which she will tell you about, coupled with research in Zambia. So it's really, in my mind, what she has been able to accomplish in a short amount of time, somewhat breathtaking, and you'll hear about it. But like Andy and Larry and me, she shares the same love for her family. And here is her amazing family, okay? And we see Jackson on the upper right, clearly holding Nate. There is her dad above, and then her in-laws, whom you'll get to meet this evening. And among this cast of characters, whom I adore, my maybe only second to Melissa is little Nate. He is so, so darling, as you can see above. And notice how in the middle up there, middle top, he's going to be the next director of cardiology. So Jackson, move over. And as you all know, Melissa's expecting baby number 2, a son. And I put in my dibs for the name Evan, if you get my drift. So it's really with my greatest pleasure that I was able to tell you a little bit about Andy and Larry, and also about their amazing young new professor, Dr. Elafros. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Feldman. And now it's my honor and great pleasure to introduce Dr. Melissa Elafros, the inaugural recipient of the Andrea and Lawrence A. Wolfe Research Professorship. I think we've already had a really lovely and very personal introduction by Dr. Feldman. I don't think I need to go into too much detail. You trained at MSU for your Ph.D. and M.D., then did some training at Johns Hopkins and joined the U of M faculty in 2021 and were promoted in 2022. Given her record of success, I know that Dr. Elafros' impact on the field of neurology will only continue to grow. She's an excellent educator, researcher. She's already mentoring people in, by the way, multiple continents, and is a fantastic clinician and an ideal fit for this prestigious professorship. And now I'd like to ask Dr. Elafros to join me on the podium so I may present her medal. Thank you and congratulations, Melissa. I'm going to leave this right here for you.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. We all agreed that I was tall enough for this podium, so we should do okay. So Andy, Larry, it's been an absolute pleasure to start to get to know you. And when we first went to dinner, we initially talked about that everyone has a bit of a different path. And we talked about my path. And I hope that the next 20 or so minutes will kind of expand on that and show you a bit more about my values and the people that help form those values and how that informs the work that I do. So as Eva might have mentioned, I was raised in Michigan. So I was raised over in Holland, Michigan, and most of my childhood really consists of being on the lake, snow, lots and lots of snow. And then I have memories of tulips, and I love flowers. I like tulips, but I get very anxious when they bloom outside of May. So that's most of my childhood. We moved to Michigan because of my father's work. So I had my parents, and then I have an older sister, Allison. And looking back on my childhood, which I feel like I'm doing more now that I have children of my own, it occurs to me that what my parents tried so hard to do was raise independent women, which basically translated to that they kept throwing challenges at us. My mom was an occupational therapist and worked in the public schools, so she made sure that we were pushed academically. And then my dad did everything else. So I can't tell you how many sprinkler heads or toilet handles or car parts that I changed before I was 16, courtesy of my father. And that really taught us to keep seeking things out. And so my biggest challenge growing up was beating my sister Allison. Allison was 3 years older than me. She's brilliant. So what I tried to do is do everything that she did, either better or earlier, which in retrospect, she probably didn't enjoy. And Allison is joining us by Zoom, and I feel like I should apologize. I don't want to, because it certainly made me a better, stronger person that didn't give up. But Al, thank you for not killing me while babysitting. I'm sure you had the chance. So, that was a good portion of my childhood there. Other people that deserve mention are the two women in the center there. So they are Jenny and Kelsey, and they are friends that I met in middle school and have continued to be very good friends through this day. And Jenny is here tonight. Kelsey has a toddler and also has a farm, so she's busy chasing other things tonight. So I'm very grateful for their support. And then the woman on the right is actually my high school guidance counselor, who is joining via Zoom. And she's someone that taught me that you could be academically challenged and not necessarily have to go to the most expensive institution. So when I was 17, all the smart people went to Michigan. My sister went to Michigan. I was going to Michigan as an undergrad. But I ended up going to Michigan State instead. And I'd like to say it's because I found the opportunities I wanted, but really what it was is I lost a bet with my father. And he taught us to take responsibility for consequences, so I lost the bet and I went to Michigan State, which in retrospect, I don't regret at all. So I showed up at 18 and I left at 30 from Michigan State. I graduated. I did graduate a couple times. But it was a good fit. And the photo on your left is 75 undergrads eating breadsticks at like midnight. So that might not have been a good life decision. Certainly not good for gut inflammation. But I had a wonderful time. And there are really two reasons why Michigan State was such a good fit for me. And the first is that I met this man welcome week of undergrad. It was probably not the best start to a relationship, but we started dating in 2007 and got married in 2019. So you can take a minute and do the math if you'd like, but it was 12 years of dating. And part of it's, most of it's my fault. But we started out at Michigan State together, and then Jackson is the blue line. He went to Rochester, Minnesota to do his internal medicine training at Mayo Clinic. I took a jaunt over to Africa for a couple years and then came back and finished medical school. After that, I went to Johns Hopkins. He went to Penn for cardiology and electrophysiology. And then eventually, we both ended up at the University of Michigan. So if you do the math, the first time we lived together was after we had gotten married in the height of the COVID pandemic. So, that went well, I suppose. But anyone that knows Jackson will tell you about his dedication and his determination. And that really, I think, shines through these 12 years of dating. He was certainly dedicated. Every time we would move, I would make sure that I would separate all of our belongings so that if we broke up or when we broke up, it was very simple that we would just, throw away the other things and be done with it. And he never threw away my toothbrush, even though it needed to be thrown away. But he's very dedicated to his family. He's dedicated to his craft, to cardiology, and he's dedicated to his patients. I think he's the only person I know that will pull in the driveway Friday at 5 p.m. and then say hello, but then get back in the car to go back to the hospital to put in a pacemaker, just so someone doesn't have to spend the night in the hospital so they can go home to their family. So I'm very grateful for Jackson and for him being forward-thinking enough to stick with it for 12 years. When we got married, I also fortunately inherited his parents. And it was very clear early on where his dedication came from. So when we told them we were having a son, they sold their house in Troy. They rented an apartment literally down the street from us, and then retired in order to take care of our child. So for the first year, we would pass Nate out the window in the morning and then, pick him up and he would get passed back through the window. It was kind of our personal drive-through for children. And they honestly are the only reason I think I can function and I'm a sane human being. And then as Eva said, there's not a presentation that's not complete without Nate. So as she said, he turned 2. He has a bike now and we've got him off his bike so he can be here today. But he's not thrilled about it. We've learned that he has Jackson's determination and my passion, so it's going to be interesting raising this kid. And we're having another son who is hopefully nicer to his older sibling than I was to mine. We'll see. The other reason that Michigan State was the absolute perfect fit for me was this woman right here. And so that's Gretchen Burbeck. Gretchen is a neurologist by training, but to those of us in neurology, she legitimized the field of global neurology and made it so it was more than a hobby, that it could be a career. So at the end of my undergrad, I walked into her office and said, I want to do an MD Ph.D., I want to do it internationally. You're the only person in epidemiology doing it. Will you help me? I wasn't important enough to do that. I didn't really know what I was asking, but she took a chance on me. And I'm so grateful because through that, she's taught me so much and taught me that while I wanted to do something important really translates to impacting patients and population health. So she first sent me to the hospital in your upper left corner, which is a small rural mission hospital in the middle of Zambia. And I became a neurologist because of the time that I spent at Chikinkata Salvation Hospital. My first week there, I watched an 8-year-old boy die of tetanus, probably tetanus. There wasn't a ventilator, there was nothing we could really do. For those in the medical field, rhizosardonicus is real, and it looks awful. And that's really what taught me that it was important to impact patient care. Because to me, it was unacceptable that an 8-year-old would die because his mom was 6 months late on his vaccines. Also, while there, she put me in charge of training her research team, and we did work on addressing stigma associated with epilepsy, because oftentimes when you have a seizure in public, you're ostracized, and in a very communal society, that's the end of it. And from there, we worked on another research study when I went back to Zambia, which was CHASE, which was looking at the prevalence of seizures in people with HIV, and how do people do over time? Not good. And how do you treat that, and how do you manage that? And so I then transitioned to working at the primary tertiary care hospital, which is the university teaching hospital there. And at the time that I first started working there, the only neurologists were predominantly researchers. And then there became a couple others. And I chose to do a fellowship in neuromuscular because of my time there. And while there, we diagnosed someone who was about 4 years older than me with ALS. And to watch that, he had the best social support in the world that I've ever seen. But to watch that unfold in a setting where you can't give the advice that we would give here, and you can't offer what little I feel like we can offer here, was really hard. But those experiences really transformed what I wanted to do with my life, and why I decided to commit myself to working in resource-limited settings and with populations that don't have everything that we have at the University of Michigan. The other thing about working with Gretchen is that she has the best connections and everyone else knows her. So I've got all these other people that have supported me throughout my career. So in the top middle, the woman in the white shirt, her name is Deanna Saylor. She's at Hopkins but lives in Zambia full-time, and she formed a neurology residency training program. So now there are Zambians working their way through this program, and it's actually a regional program, so people are flying in from other countries in order to learn to be neurologists and improve care. The gentleman in the middle, his name is Peter Winch. He's in the School of Public Health at Hopkins, and he taught me how to incorporate patient voices into research to really pick up the importance of what people feel. So it's not just numbers, it's stories. And then the last person there is Michelle Kowalson, who is here. And she is also a mentee of Gretchen's, who's a neuromuscular physician and has really helped guide me on how to balance work and life and all the challenges that come with that. The table of people at the bottom I included because the woman on the right, the Zambian woman, her name is Zuzu Sikazwe, and she's joining virtually from Zambia. She's now the CEO of one of the largest research institutions and academic institutions there. And Zuzu and I kind of co-mentored each other when I first went to Zambia. But the bigger thing is her family took me in. So every Sunday I'd go to the farm and have chicken, and I had a place to go and I had a family, and they've continued to support me. So they actually flew over for my Ph.D. graduation. The last person I'd like to talk about on this slide is Gretchen's husband, Mike. And Mike, I'm sure, never intended to become a mentor for me. He did. I was in Zambia when the COVID pandemic started, and I was working on some research. And the first thing that happened is Hopkins called, and they wanted me to come back because they wanted me to be safe. And it would have meant going back to a place where I didn't have a home, a car, or a salary for that matter, because I was on grant funding. And Gretchen and Mike took me in, so I lived with them for 6 months. Gretchen once said she had my back, and she's proved it time and time again. But during that time, Mike taught me how two people with potentially strong personalities could live together and make it work. And I'm really quite grateful for that, because there have been times that I've drawn on that to keep things going. So Jackson and I never figured we'd come back to Michigan. As you can see, all of these mentors are on the East Coast or farther east, so we figured we would stay that direction. But when we were talking about what we wanted out of our careers, we wanted strong mentorship. We wanted someplace where we could be near family and that we would have support for family. And as Eva mentioned, that's when I met Brian Callahan at a conference. And so Brian he's fantastic because he does a very good job of valuing family as well as work. So he's actually on vacation with his daughters this week. But he did a great job of introducing me to Eva, and then also Leslie Scolaris. And Leslie is a stroke physician who's worked in Flint for as far back as I think any of us can remember. And she took me under her wing along with Brian and helped me kind of transition my work to do what I value in Flint at a time when it was hard to go back over to Zambia. And I found the family that I wanted. So this is the neuromuscular division with all of our children. The kids don't look happy because we made them stop playing in order to take a picture. But you can see that we all get together and we all have a wonderful time. So to talk a bit about the work that I'm doing, so there are really two main areas that I've got things going. So the first is the Flint neuropathy study, which is in Flint, Michigan. And so the reason that we decided to start this work was that we have a pretty good understanding of what the prevalence of neuropathy and the risk factors for neuropathy are in Europe, in places like Europe, but we don't know what's going on in the ground in what I like to call kind of the real world, places like Flint. So to do this work, we went to Hurley Medical Center and we drew on some connections that I had from Michigan State and have paired up with their primary care clinic, where we are looking at neuropathy and neuropathy risk factors in their patients. And the clinic population is predominantly low-income African American. The person that deserves the credit for making this work happen is Lexi, who is my research coordinator in the suit there. She's from the Flint area and has done a phenomenal job of building connections and working with the community and the providers. So as part of this work, we ask a bunch of questions about, neurologic risk factors in general, and then also we do a neurologic exam, and we hand all that information back to their primary care doctors in order to impact care. So the publication for this work came out at the beginning of May, and has since been featured on Yahoo News, a couple other places, and actually last night the New England Journal cited it as an article that was worth noting. So let me tell you what we learned. So the accepted prevalence for neuropathies in the US is 13%, so that small red piece of the pie. In our population, it's actually 73%. It's a huge difference. And of those patients, 75 of them are a brand new diagnosis based on the research study. So most of the patients that have neuropathy don't know they have it, which is a huge problem because neuropathy, we know, causes damage to nerves, which can then lead to infection, amputations. And the same nerves that go to your arms and your legs also go to your heart and your lungs, so people with neuropathy tend to die earlier than those that don't. So for those that are not in the medical field, I wanted to just show you a quote from one of our patients so you can kind of understand what these feel like. So a 54-year-old woman said to us, it was in my big toe, and it would go numb with a bunch of tingling, and it felt like if I could just cut that toe off, I'd be okay. Within the last 6 months now, it's in my hands and has climbed up my legs. It's the sleepy feeling, little knives, and then every once in a while I get a heartbeat, a throbbing. It'll wake me up in the middle of the night and I will get up and I'll walk it off. It doesn't take it away. It just makes me feel like I'm doing something and shuts my brain down to where I can lay back down and go to sleep. And she had these symptoms for quite some time and had talked to her doctor about them, but didn't know what they were. So we are now asking the patients, what their experiences are when they bring these things up to their doctor, why they could potentially have them, and are trying to work through kind of the patient's understanding of neuropathy symptoms. And when we asked that, this gentleman who had just had an amputation told us they just took the toe. And you can ask questions, but you never get a straight answer. Basically, the doctor's just giving you pills, medicines. They want to check your blood, and they give you medicines. You ask questions like, well, what can I do to get better? And take these medicines, take these medicines. So this gentleman actually has very poorly controlled diabetes as the cause for his neuropathy. And we found a lot of that in Flint, that patients either know they have diabetes and their hemoglobin A1Cs, which is a measure of diabetes control, is over 10, and below 7 is a good control. And we're trying to understand why that is. We're also now talking to the doctors to better understand what are they saying to patients, how do they approach symptoms of neuropathy. And I can tell you we've got a lot of work to do. So last week, I was talking to one of the medicine doctors, and I said, I wanted to show him something on someone's exam, and I said, okay, where's your hammer? And he said, I don't have it, but I bought one at Home Depot last week. No joke. When I told this story to one of our fellows, he asked, okay, well, what did you ask about his tuning fork? And I didn't ask him, but that's because I was scared of the answer I was gonna get. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, but we've got a good team and dedicated patients and providers who are eager to learn that I think will have a great impact in this setting. I did eventually make it back to Zambia. So the work that I have going on there is the cohort of healthy aging and dementia. So this is a study where we have community healthcare workers going door to door in the capital city to see what neurologic risk factors there are. So community healthcare workers are people that have finished high school and oftentimes have additional training in HIV screening and testing and things like that. But we've taught them about dementia, we've taught them about dementia risk factors, and they're knocking on doors for us to find people that are 55 and above. So we're screening people for blood pressure, diabetes, we're doing body measurements to figure out obesity, but as well as malnutrition, and then they're administering a screen for cognitive impairment. After that, we're inviting people into the clinic where the doctors are doing neurologic exams. So you can see this is Dr. Namwangala, who is testing for neuropathy right now with a pin. And then they get formal neurocognitive testing where using instruments that have been validated in this setting. And we're learning a lot. Generally, as a population, Zambians are quite young. About 50% are below the age of 18. But they're aging quickly, and a lot of the risk factors that we associate with medical conditions here are popping up over there. So we're starting to see things that we may not have seen 20 years ago. And I do, forgive me for reading to you again, but I've got one quote that I want to show you from a caregiver of a patient that I think really kind of tells the story of the experiences that they're having. So this is the daughter of someone, and she says, sometimes when I sleep, my mother, fails to sleep. So some of her grandchildren who don't know her very well have started calling her a witch because she doesn't sleep. Even community members have started calling her a witch, especially because sometimes she leaves home without a shirt. So people now in the compound say, witch, witch. I worry that she gets confused. She gets whatever it's at hand, such as a metal bar, and hits someone like the kids at home. I worry that one day my mother will kill someone. I become worried that when I go far, she'll wander off. I become worried that maybe she will go out without clothes, and people may stone her because she's a witch. So I'm always with her. And this daughter didn't know that her mother had dementia, and that's why this was going on. So we've been linking these patients to care. And I'm very proud of this team because of what they've accomplished. So as I said, Zambians are quite young, so they've visited over 3,000 houses and have recruited 350 people above the age of 55. They've done that in a year. And then we've also brought in 250 of them to the clinic to screen further. They've done this despite a rainy season where things flooded and there was a cholera outbreak. They've done it despite, heat and other challenges. And this is all in the setting of that many of their beliefs were very similar to their fellow community members. So the way that they've evolved and how they've been able to spread knowledge throughout their communities is very impressive. And this work has really given an opportunity to mentor and build capacity in other people. So as Dr. Kleindorfer mentioned, I've got a couple people that I am helping with their career. So the first, kind of going left to right, is Faith Samushi. She's a neurologist who just finished her degree, and she just received funding from the American Neurologic Association to look for reversible causes of dementia in this population. So things like syphilis, thyroid problems, things that we could treat and people would improve. Dr. Mata in the middle, he is a Zambian neurologist who's using this work to better inform how do you support caregivers in this setting and how do you help families. The next photo over, her name is Reagan Shalou. She's a University of Michigan public health student who's actually in Zambia now interviewing healthcare providers to understand when someone walks in with dementia, how do you approach them and what do you do next, and why do people make the decisions they do, so that we can try to help inform care and target interventions. And then the last person is JP Omo-Omje. And so he is a Ghanaian geriatric psychiatrist that I'm proud to say will be joining us as a Fogarty Fellow next year. So he has work in Ghana looking now at in-hospital delirium and what predisposes people to developing dementia later. So to conclude, I want to take a step back and address kind of the question that always lingers in the air of, why do I live in Ann Arbor, work an hour north, and then across the Atlantic? And as we said at the beginning, that my values are that I wanted to do something important, and that to me, that became impacting individual health, population health, and kind of transforming communities. And in each of these settings in Flint and in Zambia, I think we can all agree that we're certainly impacting patient health, and that this work has the opportunity to build capacity and transform care in those settings. I think the part that's often overlooked is that by working in these settings, we have the opportunity to better understand the challenges that are everywhere. So I don't have extra money. If I had extra money, I would probably bet that the challenges we're seeing in Flint with undiagnosed neuropathy are prevalent in Ann Arbor and other parts of Michigan. And we're working to do that study in order to get that answer. But you don't have a complete picture of the problem if you're not looking at all the places the problem is. And then lastly, now that I have kids, it's certainly important to me that the way that I live my life is the way that they're going to live theirs. So part of this is that by doing this work, I'm showing Nate that, and the next son, that he too can be significant. So again, Larry and Andy, thank you so much for the support. I'm very grateful.
Wonderful. Thank you, Melissa. This concludes our program this evening. Thank you all for coming. We have a reception out in the lobby. Please join us for some drinks and snacks and hors d'oeuvres. Thanks, everyone.